It started with a flash of blinding white light and a sudden overpowering fear that I had never felt before. I never imagined that a normal day could turn into a journey into the unknown. But on that fateful afternoon, I found myself hurtling toward a realm I can hardly describe, a place that many call hell. I was walking home after a routine checkup when I felt an unexpected sharp pain in my chest. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the cold pavement gasping for breath as darkness crept in around me. In those few moments before losing consciousness, I could sense my body betraying me, and a strange feeling of detachment took over my mind. Suddenly, I felt as if I was floating above my own body, looking down at the scene with a mix of shock and disbelief. The familiar world around me began to fade, replaced by a vast empty space that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. I remember thinking, what is happening to me, as I drifted away from everything I once knew. There was no time to process the fear or confusion. My thoughts were scattered, and I could only focus on the overwhelming sensation of being pulled towards an unseen force. I felt as if I was caught in a current, dragged through darkness and light in a way that defied logic. For what felt like 7 endless minutes, I was suspended in a limbo that was neither life nor death. Yet I knew that my soul was on a collision course with a destination far darker than I could ever imagine. When I finally arrived at what I can only describe as the threshold of hell, my senses were bombarded by sights and sounds that shattered any remnants of comfort I had left. The place was not the fiery red pit that movies often portray, but rather a vast expanse of shadow and despair. I saw figures moving in the distance, silhouettes that seemed to twist and contort as they passed through a landscape of perpetual gloom. The air was thick and heavy, carrying the stench of decay and an overwhelming sense of sorrow. I began to walk forward, though I wasn't sure if I was moving on my own or being led by some unseen hand. The ground beneath me felt unnaturally cold, almost as if it were made of stone, and each step echoed in a way that made my heart pound with dread. I soon realized that I was not alone. There were whispers in the air, faint voices that spoke in a language I couldn't understand, their tones a mixture of pain and regret. I could see, too, the faint outline of what might have once been a path or a road, stretching into the darkness as if it held the answers to my unspoken questions. As I ventured deeper, I began to notice the tortured expressions on the faces of the souls that passed by. They moved slowly, as if weighed down by an invisible burden, their eyes hollow and their gazes fixed on a point far beyond my vision. One figure in particular caught my attention. He was sitting on a large rock, his head bowed and his hands covering his face. I felt an inexplicable pull to approach him, hoping that he might provide some explanation or solace in this terrifying place. However, as I drew nearer, he looked up at me with eyes full of sorrow and whispered, "You should not be here." His voice was barely audible, yet it carried a weight of warning that I could not ignore. I tried to ask him what he meant, but before I could speak he disappeared into the shadows, leaving me with a growing sense of isolation and panic. Every moment in that realm felt like an eternity, and I found myself questioning the reality of my own existence. I had always been a skeptic, someone who believed that hell was nothing more than a myth or a cautionary tale. Yet, standing there in the midst of this nightmare, I could no longer deny the reality of what I was experiencing. My thoughts raced back to moments in my life where I had made choices that haunted me, choices that I had buried deep within my conscience. In that moment, I wondered if this journey was some sort of punishment, a final reckoning for the mistakes of my past. The idea of divine retribution, once dismissed by my logical mind, now loomed large as I struggled to understand why I had been brought to this desolate place. Every step I took was accompanied by a flood of memories, moments of anger, regret, and sorrow that I had long since tried to forget. It was as if the walls of hell were echoing with the consequences of every misdeed I had ever committed. The environment around me shifted subtly as I walked further into the abyss. The whispering voices grew louder, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unspoken energy. I could feel a presence behind me, as if someone or something was watching my every move. The sensation was almost unbearable, a constant reminder that I was not meant to be here. There were no clear boundaries, no visible guards or gatekeepers, yet I knew that every step took me deeper into a trap from which I might never escape. At one point, I stumbled upon a narrow passageway, its entrance shrouded in a thick, impenetrable mist. The mist seemed to carry the voices of countless souls, their cries blending into a haunting melody that resonated with despair. Compelled by a mix of curiosity and fear, I ventured inside. The passage was dimly lit by an otherworldly glow that emanated from the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. With each step, I felt as if I was walking deeper into the heart of darkness, and the weight of every regret and sin grew heavier on my shoulders. In that oppressive silence, I had time to reflect on the life I had led. I recalled moments when I had chosen selfishness over kindness, pride over humility, and indifference over compassion. The realization was crushing. I could almost hear the faint murmurs of disapproval from those I had hurt along the way. It was as if the very air in hell was saturated with their sorrow and disappointment. I began to understand that perhaps this place was not just a physical location, but a state of mind, a manifestation of every dark thought and regret I had ever harbored. The deeper I went, the more surreal my experience became. Time lost its meaning, and I was no longer sure if I was drifting through memories of a past life or the present moment of damnation. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, not because I was at peace, but because fear was numbing every fiber of my being. It was in that moment of numbness that I realized I was at a crossroads. There was a choice before me: to continue down this path into further despair, or to fight for a chance to return to the light of life. Summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I resolved to find a way back. I began to search for any sign, any clue that might lead me out of the darkness. The journey was arduous, and every step was a battle against the paralyzing fear that threatened to consume me. I focused on the hope that somewhere beyond the horizon of my nightmares lay a way to redeem myself, a chance to correct the wrongs of my past, and to reclaim the life I had once known. I remember a moment when, as I was walking through a narrow corridor of despair, a soft glow appeared in the distance. It was faint at first, like a distant star in a cloudy sky, but it grew steadily brighter as I moved closer. The light brought with it a sense of warmth and reassurance, a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive darkness that surrounded me. With cautious steps, I approached the source of the light, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and trepidation. As I neared the glowing orb, I began to sense that it was not just a beacon of physical light, but also a symbol of forgiveness and renewal. In that brief moment, I felt as though I was being given a second chance, a chance to confront the sins of my past and to seek redemption for the choices I had made. The light enveloped me, filling me with a deep sense of calm and clarity that I had not felt in what seemed like an eternity. It was a moment of profound realization that even in the depths of hell, there could be a path to salvation. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, contemplating the meaning of everything that had happened. I knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and that the road to redemption was a long and uncertain one. But in that moment, I also knew that I could not give up. The experience had changed me irrevocably, forcing me to confront the darkest parts of my soul and to acknowledge the consequences of my actions. I resolved to carry that lesson with me, no matter what the future held.